Welcome everyone. Great to have you join ORT Jet for this webinar this morning. Today we have the privilege of hearing from Arthur Gillis. Arthur's reputation precedes him as a leader in the hospitality industry. He built his business into a thriving hotel management and franchise company. Under his leadership, the group grew to over 130 hotels operating in 7 African countries. Please feel free to post questions in the chat box and we'll address them after Arthur's talk. And a reminder to please keep your microphones on mute. Arthur, thank you so much for giving of your time and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. Over to you.
Lisa muted me, so is that the kind of talk that you want to have? All right, everyone, thank you very much indeed. It's a real honor and a privilege to be here. The last time I was asked to speak to ORT Jet was in August 2009. So from that, we learned that once a decade is enough to listen to an aged innkeeper. And I was thinking about what to talk to you about, and I drew inspiration from George Burns, who said the secret of a good speech is to have a brilliant beginning and a great ending and to keep the two as close together as possible. And that's what I'm going to try and do today. So COVID-19 has taught me lots of lessons. For example, we have one hotel that is open during this period of quarantine. And we had a husband who phoned the hotel's maintenance manager and said, "Come quickly, my wife and I are having a massive fight and she's threatening to jump out the hotel window." And the maintenance manager said, "Sir, I'm afraid that's a personal matter. A lot of people are going through trauma and it's not a maintenance issue." He says, "No, you bloody fool, the window is stuck and that's a maintenance matter." So I think different people are dealing with it in different ways. Now, there are 5 things that I think that we need to do as business leaders during this pandemic. I have previously said, and for those of you who've heard it before, I apologize, but it is what I believe in. And that is that the purpose of every business in the world, the purpose of the business is the acquisition and the maintenance of customers, to acquire, to get them, and the maintenance to keep them. It is quite astounding how many times I've given this talk and people get that confused. They talk about the purpose of the business is to make money. That's actually the goal of the business, and it's an end result if you do stuff right. I really believe that it's important for all of our staff and all of our people to understand the purpose of the business. It's never been more important than today. And when some of us that are on extended long leave go back to work, it is incumbent upon us to remind everyone that our job and our purpose is the acquisition, the getting, and the maintenance keeping of all of our customers. So what we know is that technology is turning every offering into a commodity. We've seen what technology has done during this lockup. It's moved all of us to be Zoomites and team players and all these kind of things, which well, ancient people like me never even knew existed before. So the world is different. And I believe the only way that we can differentiate our offering is through service. Service is the biggest sustainable competitive advantage that we have. Without giving spectacular customer service, we are dead in the water. Then we become a commodity, and a commodity is something where the offering is differentiated only in terms of the price. We cannot be differentiated by price because there'll always be somebody who's prepared to do it for cheaper. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. So that's the first one. That's the first of the 5 things that we're going to talk about, is the purpose of the business. The second one is hiring the right people. And we've always said that we should hire for attitude and train for skill, not the other way around. This, again, is an opportunity to see the people that are around us who has demonstrated a spectacular attitude. Everybody is feeling the pain. But look at the staff around us, the people that are our partners, and let's very clearly identify those who through thick and thin have maintained a great attitude to life, to their partners, to business, and so on. Itzhak Adizes said, you need to hire a motivated bunch of people to start with. Your job is simply not to demotivate them. And very often you get these bright-eyed, bushy-tailed people that join on the first day in the business, and all that we as management serve to do is to demotivate them over time. It's really important that we continue to motivate them. So that's the second one. The third one is to create partnerships. Partnerships mean that you are there for each other through thick and thin. It means that what we did, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well later, when we had the opportunity and we had some cash in our business, we went out to all our suppliers who were on 30 or 60-day payment plans and paid them immediately. We took a view that they are hurting more than we are hurting, and therefore we paid them. I really believe that the relationship that we have built with our suppliers will stand us in good stead in the future. Throughout our hotels, we did have a particular general manager who, through no fault of his own, had come up through a different hotel group, which I won't mention here, Southern Sun, and he learned that it was a very good idea, in fact, not to pay people. He thought this would be quite cool and quite cute to hold back the cash, because everybody says conserve cash. If I tell you that I went completely ballistic and released 3.5 million rands worth of payments in one day, because how can we expect the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, the people who supply our properties, even though we're not consuming at the moment, it's not their fault. Conversely, we own some retail space. We have a massive international company that rents space from us, and they stopped paying the rental, and their excuse was everybody else is doing it. To which one of our board directors wrote back to me privately, but actually copied them and said that applies only to mom and pop shops. It doesn't apply to large internationals, and we will move for your immediate liquidation. So they paid, but the relationship is gone. Why not pay? And if they can't pay, come to us and speak to us. They didn't do that. So I think it's imperative that we communicate our position, especially now as we're going back. Let's just have a look at what we can communicate. Tell people. It's of the utmost importance that we tell people what it is that we're doing. So that's number 3. Number 4 is that everybody in business and in life is going to get at least one AAK. An AAK is an attitude adjustment club. And an attitude adjustment club comes at the time that you start believing your own PR. And in the company that I was in, unfortunately, I had to have a media profile, and I was all over TV and Sunday Times and radio. It is singularly the biggest bunch of nonsense that I've ever been involved in. The PR company think they're doing you a favor by doing it. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And you only need to wait until you leave the company to find out. You know how you find out you've left the company? Nobody laughs at your jokes anymore. Because while you were there, they felt they had to laugh at your jokes. Now they don't laugh at your jokes. They're not so funny anymore. And the whole PR thing, the whole thing that they build you up to be is absolute nonsense. So please don't believe your own PR. It's called blowing smoke. And so people sit down. Imagine that we sat down at the beginning of 2020 and everybody said, you know, New Year's Eve resolution, and I've got a plan. Now, Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan until I hit them. And when Mike Tyson hits you, you haven't got a plan anymore. From that minute onwards, you have got no more plan. And it is that lack of having a plan, which I think is your attitude adjustment club. So those who were unfortunate enough to get into the ring with Mike Tyson found that out physically. For the rest of us, we found it out metaphorically. And maybe we as a community and we as a country and we as the world needed to have an attitude adjustment club. It's not a problem getting the club. The question is, what are we going to do as a result of having got the club? what are we going to change in the way that we operate, in the way that we behave, in the way that we consume too much, in the way that we destroy the environment? What is it that we're going to learn? And if we haven't learned anything, then it's a tragedy. If we have learned, then we will be the better for it. Some people will have used the opportunity and learned, and some won't. And lesson number 5 is don't give up. Don't give up. There are so many people who, at the first sign of adversity, just throw in the towel and give up. If you look at our forefathers and what they had to fight for, the matriarchs of our, well, the Jewish religion, of South Africa, the patriarchs that stood out there and did stuff, these people went to war. These people were killed by the million. And we have the temerity to stand here and at the first sign of a little bit of adversity, a small headwind, we say, oh, this is too much for me. I really can't handle this. The winners will be the people who actually remain on point. All of our staff, all of the people who look up to us, look at us to not give up. This is, I wrote a book with Mike Lipkin, and you may remember Mike suffered from very bad depression. He eventually had electroconvulsive shock therapy to get him through it. And I speak to Mike a couple of times a year. He now lives in Toronto. And I said to him, Mike, you're always so upbeat. It's such a tonic to speak to you, and you are an international speaker. He really is a top-class international speaker. Don't you ever get down? And he says, Arthur, with my predisposition to falling into a depression, it is a luxury I cannot afford myself. So I allow myself perhaps to have half an hour of feeling sorry for myself, and then I stop feeling sorry for myself. And I understand that this is chemical, and I understand that a lot of people can't help themselves, and I understand all of that. But for the rest of us who are not afflicted in that way, it is a luxury that I don't think we can afford to be involved in. Because I suppose the way it is the past is where we learned the lesson. The future is where we're going to apply the lesson. Let's not give up in the middle. It's very easy to give up in the middle, right at the point that we're about to succeed. And this is the time that we are there. So what I'd like to do is, if we can now maybe take a couple of the questions and answers. I think, Brenna and Lisa, you mentioned that you got some questions. So why don't you throw them at me, and let's see what we can do.
Thanks, Arthur. Okay. The first question I wanted to ask you is, so you started Proto Hotels amidst a big depression in South Africa in the early 80s. And I've no doubt that many people probably warned you against this, but you went ahead anyway. What gave you the confidence to go ahead despite the poor market sentiment at the time?
We had no bloody option. The trust bank had just been taken over by Sanlam, and Professor du Plessis said he was selling the shop. So we got together and came up with a plan simply to try and survive. This wasn't anything brilliant or genius on our side. It just was a desperate attempt to try and find something to do. And so we got out, and we'd heard about this thing called hotel management business, which sounded right because you didn't need any money for assets. You managed other people's hotels. And that's exactly what we did. So it was the crisis of the hotels being sold underneath us and us losing our jobs that precipitated the start of the company. Never before, in all of the time that I've been involved in business, have I seen a better opportunity than today. The stars are perfectly aligned for businesses to start, to restart, and to absolutely do fantastically well. People who start businesses at the moment are going to be the beneficiaries for generations to come. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Your current business is in hospitality. So probably the hardest hit industry at the moment. Can you share with us some tips as to how you stay positive, and also tell us what success means to you right now at this time?
A lot of my friends and I appreciate it enormously, they phone me and they say, aren't you worried? And it's a lesson that I learned from my wife, who said, Lawrence says, if you worry now, you're going to worry, and then when the bad stuff happens, you're going to worry again. You might as well just worry once. So there's no point in worrying now. Just hang around. If bad stuff comes, you can worry then. And that's what we try and put out there. And so I started a process of phoning every one of our general managers. And there are three of us in the corporate office, and we phone every day. We phone general managers. And after the first week, I was so miserable, it was a disaster. So I got the three of us on a call, and I said, why is everybody so miserable? And the answer is they were lacking leadership. So the next week I phoned, and all three of us did it, and we said, we're not allowing you to speak about misery. We're only going to speak about good stuff. What is it that you are doing in your community? What is it that you are doing amongst the poor? What is it that your team is putting together to look after those other members of the team? What is it that we from a corporate office can contribute? And then a friend of mine in America helped me with a really clever idea. They would have claimed it as mine, it's not. And we started to put together groups of people to plan the reopening of the hotel. So when you have 15 hotels locked down, that kind of focuses your attention. And everybody is worried about the hotel being closed. You know that a hotel is a thing that's never ever supposed to close. Most of our hotels don't have locks on the front door. You open a hotel and you close it the day it's demolished. It runs 24/7, 365 days a year. So we had to go out to build this warehouse and buy chains and locks and all sorts of stuff to close the place. So for us, it's literally opening a hotel. And so at the Protea Hotel King George, where the general manager and her husband are living in the hotel, they're the only two people there with their kids, they have now put together a plan as if we had built this hotel from scratch and we are going to be opening. We don't quite know when, but if I show you the marketing plan that they've got, it runs at the moment to over 1,000 pages. And every single member of the team, every barman, every waiter, every person, every chef, every person over there is focused on getting the hotel reopened. And it is serving everybody well, because it is a great plan. The only thing we need is Uncle Squirrel to decide when we can open, and then we'll go. Or maybe his alter ego, Mrs. Zuma. But as soon as they tell us we can, we're ready to rock and roll. And we got all the social distancing stuff in place. We got all the sanitary stuff and temperature thermometers for what that's worth. So we're ready to rock. Have you got a plan to reopen your business? That's the question.
Arthur, so my next question, which I see Jason Sanders actually asked the same question in the chat box, but what does hospitality and the travel industry look like post-COVID, both globally and specifically in South Africa?
I have absolutely no bloody idea. But what I can tell you is that our team is sitting there in the starting blocks, ready to do whatever it is that we can do under the circumstances that are presented to ourselves. We don't know what's going to happen to us. If you have a look, for example, at the Tour de France race, the Tour de France, people get on their bikes and they pedal like hell and they go around, and the whole bunch of mishuganas. But anyway, they do this. If you say to yourself, who are the winners? Well, I can tell you, first of all, let's talk about who are the losers. The losers arrive at the bottom of Alpe d'Huez and they look up and they say, oh my God, look at the mountain we got to climb now. What are we going to do? Well, you need to be a particular kind of idiot to not understand that you've got to climb Alpe d'Huez. It's been in the books for 5 years. So you know you've got to climb it. When you turn around the corner, what winners do is they say, this is what I've trained for. This is the long climb that I'm going to beat people on. So those are the knowns. But there are also unknowns. And the unknowns to us are things like wind and rain. And that's going to happen. We don't know when it's going to happen, but if you go on the Tour de France, at some point it's going to be windy and it's going to rain. The day that it starts raining, you say, right, this is the rain that I trained for. Whereas somebody who hasn't trained, who doesn't have dry weather gear and so on, wet weather gear and dry suits, they say, well, that's too terrible. I mean, how can you now have this problem? I think that it's incumbent upon us to plan for this. We think that we've seen all the craziness that can happen. We're not sure that we got everything, but whatever is dealt to us, we are going to be there and we are going to try and deal with it quickly and also with a sense of humor, because there is nothing that we can do if they stop people flying. So we will work it out as we go along. And we've got plans in place for each and every one of our businesses.
Thanks, Arthur. The next question is, in terms of managing cash flow, what experience can you share for this, especially for a hotel that's closed its doors during this period?
Okay, so that's a question that I preempted. I assumed that would come up because it always does when people are talking about this. Cash is king. And when you're flying in an aircraft and the aircraft depressurizes, what they say is put on your own mask before helping the kids that are next to you. And very often we feel that we want to put the mask on the child, but then what happens is that we die in the process and the child can't fend for themselves. So it's counterintuitive. We need cash to be able to survive. What we did in each of the businesses, we said, right, how much cash we got? In one business, we got 84 months. In another, we've got 6 months. So that's how varied the spectrum is. We went to all our suppliers, we sat them around and we said, right, this is what we got. What do you think we can do together to be able to make some kind of a plan to be able to survive? And if you engage your suppliers, then you'll do obviously very, very well.
Thanks, Arthur. That brings us to our next question, which is also about the suppliers that you're speaking about. How can we use this time to improve the bonds and relationships with our suppliers or customers?
I believe that we should over-communicate. Suppliers, as I've just said, customers, part of our plan, which I'm giving you our plan at each hotel, is we've got teams of people that are employed that are being paid 50% or 30%, plus what they get from tours, 80% depending on levels of salary. And what we have got them doing is we've got each of them phoning each one of our customers and thanking them for the business that they've given us in the past, saying that we really appreciate it. We know you're going through a hard time as well. Please understand, we will be there for you when we open, and I'm going to phone you again in a week's time or whatever. And so we are communicating with all of our customers all of the time in order to ensure that we are not just fair weather friends. And those that are going through tough times themselves, we are there to speak to them and to listen to them and to be with them.
So I'm going to ask you combine 2 questions for the next one. Just what are your biggest learnings from COVID, and what are the silver linings that you think comes out of this lockdown period?
Unfortunately, the people can Zoom and they don't have to conference in the same room. So that's a very sad thing for me. I didn't think that was possible, because that's going to bugger up our conference business into the future. But I do believe, having studied this in some depth, you can have a Zoom call, let's say for a negotiation, if you have a relationship with a person. It is extremely difficult to do so if you don't. You can't read their body language, you can't have the jokes, you can't have the two-way conversations, you can't find out more about them. It's a much more structured environment, funnily enough. And so I think that where you have beautiful relationships in a company and people get along really well and they care for each other, it's okay. You can continue on Zoom for a while, but the relationships are not building up. So I think that we're going to have to top up the tank again. The tanks are being emptied. That's the thing with the customers. And the biggest learning that I've had is the amount of care and concern that people have for each other. The outpouring of love and the empathy that people have out there, it's just astounding and beautiful. And it is my wish and prayer that as we get through this, that people don't forget how good it made them feel to give and to be kind and to be nice. I think that is the Attitude Adjustment Club, one of them that we needed as people. And God willing, it will continue into the future.
And Arthur, what are your two biggest learnings with regard to negotiations, specifically in difficult situations?
I see Mervyn Malamet smiling because he's an expert at that. So far be it from me. But the things that I've learned, which I think Mervyn would concur with, is in all our negotiations, we have tried desperately to be absolutely 100% honest. I think it is imperative that you are honest with everybody that you're talking to. And the other thing which I've learned over the years is to call poor behavior. So I accused a major bank this week of dealing in bad faith. They agreed to something and then they went back on their word. And I said, before we get onto the call today, I want to say that at the last call, your company exhibited poor behavior. So let's talk about that. I will never say something to you and go back on it. If it's within my power, if it's not within my power, I'll call you immediately and say this has been taken out of my hands. But we never attack the individual. We never say it is you it's your poor behavior. We say the company has exhibited poor behavior, the company for which you speak. And it clears out the rust in the pipes very quickly if people do that. And then people do that to me. And I encourage it. I encourage them to be honest. Tell me the truth with compassion. I don't care what it is. Just tell me the truth. I do think that it needs to be done with compassion, especially now that we are not physically in a position to give people a hug. And if you can't afford to pay people salaries, you need to say so. Don't tell them that you might or you could or you maybe. It's nonsense. You either can or you can't. So as things stand at the moment, we are not able to pay salaries. However, this is the commitment that I make to you. As things get better, you will be the first people back. I'm accruing all of the money that is due to you, but not payable, and we will make it good to you if the business improves to an extent that we can do. My experience is that people really value honesty.
So true. Arthur, the next question is specifically relevant to our organization, ORT Jet. And I wanted to ask you, what impact have your networks and your mentors had on your journey and on your success? And how have they influenced your path over the years?
First of all, to ORT Jet, to all of the mentors and all of the proteges, I don't call them mentees. Sounds like something that you throw in a bottle of Coke. So to the mentors and the proteges, I just want to say that I truly respect and admire the work that you're doing. I cannot think of a more worthwhile endeavor for both parties, the parties on both sides of that relationship. It is absolutely the most important thing that we can do, to pass on knowledge both ways, because both the mentor and the protege both get benefit from the relationship. Philip Kravitz, Cape Union Mart, said, what is the net worth of your network? What is the value of your network? Is your network people that are way beyond your normal sphere? Are there other people who challenge the way that you think? In my world, our founder, who then was the chairman for many years of our company, Otto Stellick, with whom I still have a superb relationship. Otto is a committed Christian. He's a reborn Christian. He's married to a black lady. He's Austrian. His background couldn't be more different to mine. Assembled a bunch of people, all of whom were completely different in their outlook. And Otto taught us to celebrate the differences that we all bring to the party, not the fact that we are similar. And he said, if any of us come up with the same idea, one of us is superfluous. So he's looking around to see who he can chase out of the room. Now, what's funny is that in all the years, in the 36 years of Protea, we had a funny thing in our shareholders agreement, is that nothing would be passed, no building would be purchased, no contract would be entered into unless it were unanimous. And bear in mind, we had 9 directors. Do you know that in 36 years, not only did we never ever vote, we never ever had that disagreement, because we took it to say that if somebody felt badly about an investment that we were moving into, we wouldn't get into it. My next mentor, I guess, is Sam Hackner. Sam for many years sat on Investec, their credit committee. He's chairman of the Investec Property Group, and I speak to him 5 times a day. When I phone him, Corin answers the phone and says, "Your girlfriend's on the phone for you." So, because he's at home now, he says, "We can't have this relationship with my wife watching." And so the beauty of the relationship with Sam is just the unbelievable intellect of this man. He's got such depth of feel that sometimes I'll put a problem to him in the hotel space, of which he knows nothing. Well, he knows a hell of a lot now, but in the beginning he didn't. And he'll instantly come up with an answer based on his hundreds of thousands of hours of experience. And very, very rarely is his gut feel, his depth of understanding wrong. And certainly it's always provocative, and certainly it always invokes this conversation. And I suppose the most important mentor in my life has been Lauren, my wife, who we spoke about before everybody else joined the call. And she has shown me what it means to care about people deeply. If I say, you know, "La, I'd like to buy you something as a gift," her response was, "Right, how many people could we feed?" That's her factory setting. And she's taught me an enormous amount about giving and caring for others. And I think that everybody could be, could benefit by that kind of softness and that kind of care in the world. If there were more people like Lauren, you know, the world would be a better place. Okay,
Sure.
What else?
That one. Thanks, Arthur. Next question.
Are we done? Is our time up yet? Oh, no, not. Okay. Okay.
Well, okay. What, in terms of setbacks and challenges, how do you keep everyone engaged in a greater vision, especially with regard to your values and purpose?
Every company needs to have a vision. At Protea, it was, you know, to take hotels that could be better by managing and marketing them better, and to manage and market them better. And we drummed that into everybody's head over and over and over and over again. And that was our mission of the company, and the values that we had were the 3 Protea principles, of which the first one is respect for human dignity. And this respect for human dignity was something that we would call people on. So where people did not behave in a certain way, we would use the Disney example of good show and poor show. Disney, I think, is the best customer service organization in the world. The theme parks, not their hotels and stuff, but their theme parks are just superb. And what they did over and over again is that they will talk about good show and poor show. And we would say, something has just been done. We've decided to cut people's salaries by 50% at a particular hotel. Is that respect for human dignity or not? And based on that, the conversation would start, because that's a zero-sum game. If any of them have got let's say a 0 next to it, if you multiply a whole lot of numbers and eventually one of them is 0, the answer is 0. So that was an absolute non-negotiable. It is a unique time for all of us to sit down and establish your principles. I don't really think that what your principles are as important as having them. So to sit down with your team, get your principles out there, and then every single decision that is made, anybody in the team can say, "I don't think that we are living up to that particular principle." So that's where we are. And just keep on repeating the values and purpose over and over and over again. We
So
had, sorry, let me just give you an anecdote. One of our general managers, Tutu Moloko, who's an absolute genius. She's the general manager of Protea Hotel Fire and Ice from Schlanger Ridge, and she was arrested by 16 police officers, organized crime, the detective branch, the local city police in Durban. They frog marched her off to the police station because she was trading illegally. Well, the reality is she was not trading illegally. The hotel's not open. She gave them a grandmaster key and said, open any door that you want to. Here's the card. You can open any door in the hotel. I come here to switch on the air conditioning plant and to talk to the maintenance people that have to be here for security purposes. But somebody had bust her. And yesterday she went to court. So we got the top lawyer in Durban to defend her. We put together a dossier, and we will very soon be prosecuting the investigating officer for wrongful arrest. And that's going to cost us much, much, much more than anything else. And Tutu says, just leave it. It's not so important. Yes, Tutu, it is important because it shows everybody how we deal with our people. And when I went on the board, and we only own 50% of that hotel, and we spoke to the board about it, as well as the board of Platinum, which is our company, instantly everybody said, throw any amount of money you want to at it. This now is for us a principle. So as of yesterday, they withdrew the charges. But that doesn't help us. We are still going for the officer who came in there and in front of her young son, frog marched this woman out of the hotel and off to the police station. It's important that we stand up for correct values.
So Arthur, that brings us to our next question, also about people, your values, and I'm going to combine the next two questions, so because you've also touched on it quite a bit already. But how important is communication with your staff, and people being one of your core values? What are some of the things that you do to look after your staff, to make them feel valued, both now at this time and usually? I mean, you've given us quite a few examples already, but if there's anything else you want to add to that.
Well, all that you need to do now, with all the hotels in the country, basically all, couple are open, but all the hotels in the country locked up, is to walk in there. And a hotel that doesn't have people in it is basically a whole bunch of blocks of bricks with plaster and a roof on it. It's got no soul, it's got no character, it's got no nothing. It's a terrible place. It could be a prison cell or a hospital. No, don't say that too loudly. Next thing they'll appropriate the hotels. But it's got no character whatsoever. It is the people that make the difference. And therefore, if we treat our people correctly, and we train, coach, and counsel them, and obviously hire them correctly in the first place, the ones that have the right attitude, then hotels are a place that when you walk into, it is a great experience. Imagine that you fly to Joburg. Now, I know this is a difficult concept for some, but remember we used to get on that aluminium can, we used to fly for 2 hours and land, and then you used to go and do business in Johannesburg. That place up there with with the smog and all that, remember that? Okay. So you have a tough day. You arrive back at your hotel at night. Either everybody's miserable, the staff aren't interested, it's cold, there's no music playing, it's just a horrible place. You want to get out of there as quickly as you can. Conversely, imagine a hotel run by Tutu Moloko, and if you haven't been there, go and try it out. I'm not punting a particular hotel. You don't have to stay there. Go in for a drink. You remember what a drink is? Alcohol that you can buy at a bar. You know what a bar is? Those things that we've forgotten about, but it's all going to come back. Don't worry. If you can't remember, it'll come back to you. And when you go in there, you'll see the fun. You'll see the staff running around and vibing with each other. So it's our job to keep that spirit alive. It is our responsibility to tell our people that work with us how critical it was and how critical it's going to be into the future. Because at the end of the day, the responsibility of everybody in this group is to provide employment for the people of South Africa. That's our job. It's not to try and do away with less. Everybody says to me, in the days now that you found out about the automation, how many people can you do without? Answer, none. I don't want any less people. Each of the people that we employ support at least 10 other people. our job is to have more people, not less. So we are avoiding a lot of the automation that is being thrust on us. And even where that automation is important and the guests want it, we will then try and deploy the people that have been sidelined as a result of automation and do something else with them. I don't want to try and have fewer people. I want to have more people in the hotels.
Thanks, Arthur. I think your examples of what you guys do for your staff are, you've probably got hundreds, but I listened to the talk you did a couple of weeks ago where you spoke about the birthday presents that you buy for your staff's children, and just incredible. I don't know if you want to touch on that quickly, but.
Yeah, today is Lee Rasmus's birthday. He's the husband of Donnay Rasmus, one of our financial analysts at our offices. And the first thing that happened when we went into lockdown was one of our members of staff suggested that we could save money by not sending a present to every member of the staff on their birthday, as well as to their children. And I was horrified. I couldn't have been more upset. And I said to them, but this is precisely what we live for. Imagine that you were a child who had a birthday just before COVID, or you are Lee Erasmus, and your birthday falls into the period. We are going to continue. I don't care if I don't take a salary. That's not important. What is absolutely critical is that we are out there and looking after our people. And if we can do this and give a little birthday gift and a bit of fun to the kids and to the spouses who give up so much, because, you know, in this case, Donnay is working every hour, night and day, as well as running a family, and Lee is the one who's got to pick up some of the slack. It's our little way of saying thank you very much for all it is that you do as a contributor to our company. And we would never walk away from that.
Amazing. Thank you. This brings us to our last question, and then I think there are 2 or 3 questions that have come in. But my last question is, what are your top 3 principles which you employ in order to differentiate your business?
Oh, that's very easy. Service, service, and service. Done.
All right, so I'm going to go, there were 2 questions which I saw here. So the first one says, Arthur, oh, sorry, it just jumped away from me as I was reading it. There you go. Notwithstanding that I'm very optimistic personally, as are you, how do you see economic recovery given the macroeconomics in South Africa after the last 10 years, coupled with the predicted GDP shrinkage in the fiscal year ahead?
Okay, great question. Thank you very much for that. All of the elements that you speak of will serve to depress the rand versus hard currencies. That, coupled with a lower fuel price, added to the fact that airlines will fly anywhere for a buck because they need to, will make tourism in South Africa the hottest destination on the planet. We would be happy to accept in a number of our hotels, I'm talking about the top end hotels, $100 a night. And that would allow us to employ lots and lots of people and do very well by them. So I think that South Africa is set for a tourism boom, the likes of which we've never seen before. And yes, we are going through birth pains, and yes, there is corrupt government. We understand that. But that's no real different from any other emerging nation anywhere in the world. I applaud massively the people that are fighting the fight to ensure that justice is done. And at the same time, opportunities will emerge for us. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Not at all.
So the next one from our audience is, what do you think will happen with the hotel buffet, especially the breakfast buffet, as Accor said it will be a thing of the past?
Oh, you mean that very well-known, very large hotel group that has 4 hotels in South Africa, that one? Okay. Accor is a French group, and I think that should say everything that you need to know about them. They're very good at certain things and not the best at others. Hotel buffets, for the moment, are going to be a thing of the past. But COVID will come and COVID will go. And I believe that if that's what guests want, the buffet, the famous hotel breakfast buffet, will make a resurgence. All of our hotels are planning to do what is called a table d'hôte, or a single price breakfast, where we deliver stuff to the table. At the end of the day, the only person who counts is in our case, our guest, in most of your cases, your customer. What is it that they want? And if they want to be served a box of Rice Krispies in a box at the table with a sealed container of milk, that is precisely what we're going to do. But there may come a time in the not too distant future that people have buffets. And I think that buffets are going to be a thing of the future, and not a thing of the past. They're just going to be temporarily suspended.
Thanks, Arthur. Actually, someone, Devere, has just said here that Israeli hotels are already reopening buffets, that he saw that on the news from Eilat yesterday. So
Our co-religionists are hardy people. They're tough.
The question here from Mikhail says, how would you go about finding a suitable mentor?
Easy. ORT Jet. Next.
Good answer. And then I think we've got to the end of our questions, but just wanted to read a beautiful message here, Arthur. I don't know if you're looking in your chat box, but from your son, Anton, said, very proud to have this young, energetic man as my father. He's a mentor to one, mentor to many. His compassion and love for humanity has no boundaries. So beautiful message.
Thank
there.
you. Thanks, Anne.
And yeah, Arthur, I don't know if you want to close off, or just, your energy and positivity is just incredible to listen to. And from ORT Jet, we just wanted to really thank you for your time and for spreading this message of hope and positivity to us. So thank you.
Thanks, Brenna. Thanks, Lisa. I do have a number of kind of comments that I made as an aside, and I'd like to just kind of share them, if I might. I think this crisis is the greatest opportunity I've ever seen in business. Some wise person once said, never waste a good crisis. Now we've got a proper crisis. So let's keep going. Let's try very hard to not take ourselves so seriously. There are some people that take themselves very seriously, and I can assure you, all of us, in the not too distant future, will find ourselves in Pinelands number 2. That's where we're going to end up. So before we get so hung up about our ego and our position out there and all that stuff, let's go now and make a difference to the world. I have said previously, and I say again, that hope is not a strategy. People come into my office and they sit down with me and they say, well, I hope, stop. I've had it framed and it's in a frame in my office over there. And office, remember that place that you used to go to and sit with other people and have got that place, okay, that you haven't seen for a while. So hope is not a strategy. You can't tell me you hope things are going to get better. It's nice to have hope, but it's not a strategy. You have to have a strategy. The only way to avoid criticism is to do nothing, to say nothing, and to be nothing. I was once faced with a very difficult problem, and Lauren, my wife, just sent me a WhatsApp, and what she said to me was, it's not going to be easy. I'm telling you it's not going to be easy, but I am telling you it's going to be worth it. And if you persevere, it's worth it at the end. And now I'm going to quote a Christian minister from the 1800s, a guy called Everett Hale. Everett Hale, I mean, it sounds like a Christian minister, right? He says, I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And I will not let what I cannot do interfere with what I can do. And a bit closer to home, Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs said, we are worth what we are willing to share with others. All of us have had an opportunity to catch up on movies and series that have been around. And I watched Bruce Springsteen on Broadway. I couldn't get in to see the show when I was in New York, and so I watched it. It's on Netflix. And the question that he asks is to me, the seminal question. I've never heard it put this way before, but at the end, that's what he says. He says, are we going to be ghosts or ancestors to the people that follow us? And if we're going to be ghosts, we're going to come back and haunt them. And if we're going to be ancestors, we're going to guide them and steer them. So that is what he said. And to me, that really resonated. He's a very deep and very, very smart guy. So thank you, ORT Jet. Thank you for the work that you do. Really appreciate it, Brenna, Lisa, and everybody on the call. Thanks for listening to my stuff. And I'll see you next decade. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Arthur. Thanks, everybody. Take care and have a good day.